So we're going to be taking a look at a really talented photographer named Brooke and this photo right here. What I love about particularly this photo is how much focus there is on natural light in the photography. You can get a lot of beautiful images with very little lighting going on, and there's different ideas that you can apply to still make those images great. But what we're hoping to do is take a look at the natural lighting, understand the ideas, and then possibly apply some artificial lights to amplify the creativity. So starting off looking at our reference photo, it's a pretty dark and contrasty image. It's simple, but it has a lot of tones in it, and I think that's the main thing that we want to focus on. Thankfully, in this image, we actually have a reflection in the eyes. We can actually see the photographer shaped out in front of the light, but we can also see that there's a large soft source. This could be a softbox with any kind of fluorescent tubes with the white balance set to be proper, as well as it could just be a window. So we're going to try and replicate that as if it's a window with some diffusion over it. And when we jump into CINETRACER, it's actually a very, very simple setup. I emulated a room with one window and the light shining right through the window. And all that we did to get our key was use a window and put some sheet diffusion over it. And that could be anything from a shower curtain or even a blanket, anything that's going to allow the light source to be a lot more soft, as well as the light source to be much larger on the subject. And then to help the light not spill all over the place, I used some curtains to flag off the edges of the light to get the amount of light that I wanted on the subject as well. And all we did for the background was put two different chalkboards up. I'm assuming that that's what they had for the background and only used one. I used two because the chalkboards in the software were a little bit small for my liking, but any kind of textured background would work for this. This could be a blanket, a sheet, anything that you think would look good for a moody background. That's really up to you. Or you could find something around your house that looks interesting and shoot the photo there. And when we look at the actual photo, it's very similar. It's a little bit more high key and the skin tones of the characters are a little bit different, but you have some texture along the background, as well as we have a very beautiful soft key on the face. You have a little bit of an highlight, not as dramatic because there's not any sunglasses reflecting the surface, but you get a beautiful key and a very, very simple setup. Now, what's fun about this is there's already a lot of light coming in, but depending on how much light's there, you can bring your ISO up or your aperture down. For this example, I used a very low aperture at 50 millimeters to illustrate what it would look like to give more interest to a less boring background because there's a lot of depth of field and a lot of blurry background, so it helps us hide any mess that's in the background. So a quick note from our sponsors, which is the YouTube channel. If you haven't gotten a chance to check out the Improve Photography Plus page, it's a really, really cool place to up your photography in a bunch of different ways. What I'm really excited for in the middle of all of these tutorials is we're doing a bunch of interviews with different photographers, and what I'm most excited for is that some of these photographers that we're bringing on, we're going to be launching new courses to help people go deeper into their photography on their specific creativity. So if you haven't checked out Improve Photography Plus yet, we'd really recommend it. It's the best way to support the channel, and in my opinion, it's the best next step for you to take whenever you're learning about all of these different lighting concepts that we talk about on the channel, and then to be able to really understand the nitty-gritty parts to become a great photographer. Now, if we look at what's going on in this a bit more complex scene, this is exactly how I would light it if I had all the tools, all the control, and everything I wanted to do. And the other lighting setup, that's as cheap as a window and a sheet. That becomes very, very easy to recreate. Now, adding on to that lighting setup, and I think what could have made it more dynamic, is a couple of different things. And if we look at the image we ended up getting, it's definitely a lot more dynamic in different ways. Not to say that this image is better than the last one, it's just different. And I think that there's things to notice about the style of lighting that I chose to go with this, but still capturing something similar to what she did. If we pick apart what's going on in the image, there's something kicking against the back of his head with a light to separate him from the background, as well as tie him into whatever's hitting the background. There's a large highlight on the eyes, which helps to give some kind of interest and draw into the face. And then the key is coming a little bit off to the side, which helps create a little bit of contrast to the overall image that's not just darkness and brightness, but direction. The first thing we want to break down is our key. This is a bit of a complex setup, but this could be a softbox or anything. But I also wanted to show sometimes a cheaper and more budget-friendly option is to use any bright light source. This could be a flash. We have a bounce card, which helps diffuse the hard source, which could be a flash or some kind of continuous light. And that light's going through another diffusion source, which is more of a general silk, which is similar to what we put over the window. This could be put into a frame or hung from the ceiling. And this is what's called a book light. A book light is a diffuse source going through another diffuse source to create a very soft, large source overall. The issue with this kind of lighting setup is you need a lot of output. That could be either a couple of flashes, which is really cheap, or a strong continuous light. Or the alternative is to have a high ISO camera and bring your ISO and be able to trust that you won't have a grainy image. When we look at the background, we see a lot of light going all over the place, which doesn't necessarily help for the emulation that we're trying to go for, which is giving the background some darkness and some drama. So I added in this flag, and if you look, when we bring it down, the light spills all over the background. But whenever I bring the flag back in, we're able to shadow off part of the image, and all the light that's hitting on the background is coming from the light that we have back there to create the shape that we want. And finally, what we have is our kicker, and this is hitting the opposite side of the back of his head, and this allows there to be some separation and some contrast. Now, of course, this comes down to preference of how much or how soft or how strong you want your kicker, but I think it really helped add some extra depth into this image. And to break down some easy options, you can get an actual C-stand and a flag for pretty cheap on Amazon. You could also get a Godox SL-60 to be able to use for your key. If you wanted something stronger, you could get a 300D or a Godox SL-200. There's a lot of different options, and I'll list to a handful right here. But if you wanted to save some money, this is where strobes and flashes really come into play. Because it's not continuously going on, you can get a lot more output for a lot less money. So you can use 2 flashes to achieve this look, and again, shoot them against the bounce and through the diffusion to get a very soft look. Our background light is creating a very interesting texture on the background so that we have something interesting behind them that's still moody. Our kicker is helping add him into the background as well as separate him from a 2-dimensional space. This motivates a feeling that there is a light that's hitting him from the background that's also on the background, and also helping create some dynamic shape. And our soft key is creating a beautiful shape along the face, but alone, it's not that dynamic. So when we add all 3 lights together, we're able to get a very dynamic and interesting scene that has different textures, as well as really accomplishes the emotion that you're trying to convey within the image, which is something of a mysterious character, but also still beautiful and elegant. So I think it's really interesting to notice the different ideas that you can get from lighting in a small space. Remember that all of your windows are lights, they're real sources. If you look right here, this is actually a light, but I could easily open up my window and get a similar source. I might try something out like that to illustrate it in the future. And if you haven't had the chance yet, we'd love you to subscribe to the YouTube channel, as well as join the community over on Facebook. We're super excited for the content that we're able to bring to you and tell stories of amazing photographers and help you improve your photography.